Life is complex.
So is our mental health. It cannot be understood by diagnosis alone.
Our philosophy is treat the person, not the mental illness.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Humanizing Mental Health. I'm Trent Nakers.
And I'm Jeremy Alcorn.
And today we have an opportunity to sit down with Dr. Brian Arnold, who I believe you started off your education in special education, and now you've moved on to get your PhD. Is that correct?
That is correct. Absolutely.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. So I'm curious. I believe the title of the podcast today is Looking at the Limits of Labels. Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about what brings you in for that topic?
Yeah. And thank you guys for having me. This is such a cool opportunity for me to kind of talk about why I get to be where I'm at and how I'm able to drop some labels that were put on me and then be able to excel as a result of them. And it's throughout in my whole life. You know, I'm 61 years old now, and I can say not even less than 10 years ago, I can even say less than 2 weeks ago, where somebody put a label on me and that I had to say, wait a minute, is this who I am? Is this my identity? Or is this something that I have to change into, and to make different in my life? And, I can say I was in third grade. I'll just kind of just tell you a little bit about my story. I was in third grade and I couldn't read. And nobody could figure out why I wasn't able to read, why I wasn't catching on, why I wasn't able to get some of these things that the other kids were getting. And I would be embarrassed and I would be in class and I couldn't do it. And they decided that it wasn't called dyslexia at the time because they didn't really have a label for it back in the early 70s, but they just knew that there was something wrong. And so immediately I was then put into what they consider special ed classes. It wasn't that I wasn't able to pass IQ tests or wasn't able to do stuff. I just was struggling with just part of academics. And now these days they have other ways to help you with read. Maybe it was ADHD or just, not being able to sit still, all those things. But I can remember how hard it was once I had to start to go to show up at school, play recess with the rest of the kids, and then end up going into a different classroom or going into a different place. Because I was now labeled a special ed kid. I can remember even, as I went to junior high and sitting down in junior high in English classes and then being asked to read out loud why kids laughed at me, why kids made fun of me, why kids, and you guys have been to junior high because I can look at your faces and tell you you're old enough to have been through junior high. Junior high is rough. The kids are relentless and they don't play. And I hated school with a passion. I didn't want to go to school. I can remember going to high school and being, there was it was a big high school. It was here in Denver, Colorado. It's called Cherry Creek High School, which is 3,000 students at the high school. And everybody got to go to schools in the building except for the special ed kids. We were out in trailers. And so we'd have to walk out to the trailer and do a whole bunch of just crazy stuff. I can remember going to an English class and the teacher saying, oh, I'm going to teach you how to spell. You're going to get this. And so I would spell the words and I would stay in from practice. I was an athlete and wanted to go to practice, but I'd have to stay a half hour or 45 minutes after school so she could teach me how to spell. And then I would spell it right for her test. And then next week in the paper, I'd spell all the same words wrong. And then she got so upset that she kicked me out of class. She just said, you can never come back to English again. And again, so now I'm ready to go to college, right? And I'm not going to college. There's absolutely no way that you can convince Brian Arnold that he's going to go to college. The problem is I just happen to be a pretty good athlete. And I don't know if that was a problem or just a gift from God that allowed me to be a very good athlete. And I told my mom, I don't care how good of an athlete I am not going to college. I had some scholarship offers, and because of the special ed status, I did not have to take like the SAT or the ACT or the standardized test that would get you into college. I didn't have to do that. And so I was offered several different scholarships. Well, I said I was a gymnast before. Now I'm a track athlete. I play football. I'm just going to go to stunt school. I'm going to go be a stunt man. I'm going to get to Hollywood and that's what I'm going to do. And my mom's like, no, we need to go to college. Can you at least try it? I will buy you a Jeep if you just go to college and you stay there. And she was like, maybe graduate or just a year. I will get you a Jeep. And so I said, okay, I guess I don't hate sports that bad. And if I'm going to get a Jeep, now you're 18 years old, right? And we make some really poor decisions like that's enough to go to college and change my whole life around because she's going to give me a Jeep. Well, my mom just turned 81 years old a couple months ago, and I'm still waiting for that Jeep. It still hasn't shown up yet. I asked her last week, "Where's my Jeep, Mom?" And she just laughs at me. Well, I got to get you to college. So I picked the college that was as close to Hollywood as possible. It was called Azusa Pacific University, and literally it was in like a half-hour drive because I figured I would go for a year. If athletics went well, great. If it didn't, I'm quitting. I'm going to a stunt school. And what I found out in college is that it wasn't so bad. There were people, there were resources, there were, places where I got accommodations, but nobody was making fun of me anymore. Nobody was telling me that I couldn't. Nobody was labeling me not enough. I decided to stop labeling me as not enough because I had other plans. I'm okay. I'm going to be good at whatever that as I do. And then I had that one person. And this is what I say about labels and limits is that one coach that I had became the source of my belief in myself. He told me I was good enough. He told me I could do it. He told me that I could make a difference in people's life, that I had the ability to do it. And so what was kind of crazy about that whole deal was that he fed into me for 5 years. For 5 years, he was my mentor. He was my coach. He was the person who believed in me when I had so many other people telling me that I couldn't. And I was able to get a degree, and I got a degree in education, and I was going to go be a PE teacher. I'm coming back to Colorado. I got my degree. I got a degree in communications and in physical education somehow with doing all the special things they asked me to do. I'm coming back to Colorado. I'm going to be a PE teacher. I get to Colorado. I have to take a test in the state of Colorado in order to be a teacher. This is back in 1987. And I have to take a test. And in order to be a PE teacher in Colorado, right, I have to pass a spelling test. That's not going to happen. There's no way I'm passing a spelling test in Colorado, not today, not yesterday, not any day. And so I take the test 3 times and back to California I go because I'm not allowed to be a PE teacher in the state of Colorado in 1987. Labeled again that I'm not enough. And that was tough. That was hurtful. I have a child by now. I've had, a kid that I got to take care of. I got to go back. And California, fortunately, allowed me to be a teacher. And then here's where, and I will quit my story here pretty quick, but I was able to go get my master's degree now. And I got it in this thing called educational technology. So now I'm a technologist. And so now I have the ability right now to be equalized because I can type on a computer now and there's a spell checker. I can type on a computer now and it checks my grammar. I can type on a computer now and now even speak to a computer that allows me to write a book or allows me to get my doctorate, allows me to do my dissertation because now I don't have to say this is what's wrong with me. I can say I can equalize myself. And that was the first time that I can remember in my life where I believed I was not enough. And then in the middle of my dissertation, because I've been getting accommodations throughout my education where I have, longer to take tests or, help with writing. There's a writing center or a learning center. And so now I'm working on my PhD or I'm working on my doctorate and they tell me, I said, okay, I need some accommodations. And they say, at this level, we ain't got nothing for you. You, you can find somebody else, but you got to this level and we don't have anything in our department that can help you with your papers because you're going to have to go find another doctoral student or a doctoral, professor or somebody who can, help you with the research and that kind of stuff because you've already got to that level. And that's when I kind of knew at this point in my life that the labels didn't matter. I could do anything and there's nothing that somebody could stop me to do if I put my mind to it. So that's my short version of the story. I mean, I could go into longer, but love to have questions or you guys just tell me what you talk to me, ask me questions or wherever we go. So yeah, that'd be awesome.
All right. Please, thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate you signaling me there, dude. Because man, like Dr. B, there was so many points because like I want to join with you because I very much I was a person that was in special education myself. Like as a person with a physical disability, and I don't have dyslexia, but I did struggle with things, and I can appreciate where you're talking about just at the very beginning, sort of that walk of shame like where it's about you go to these special areas and you're trying to do these things, but then you're singled out, you're labeled as other. And, like, and it's about, okay, how do I take that narrative? And like one thing that I talk to a lot of my clients about is really, it's about, internalized oppression and taking like a contamination narrative and trying to really take that back and like turn yourself into the hero of your own story. And for so many of us, it's about you have to either try to do that yourself to really sort of integrate that in, or for you, it was about you had somebody that really gave you that anchor that you could really feed off of so that that was, like, this is who I am, and returning to that over and over again. And I can't imagine for you how valuable hearing that externalized voice that you were then, it almost sounds like you were able to internalize that coach for you, and how powerful that has been probably in your work with other people. Sorry, I know that was a bit of a summarization more than a question, but I wonder, like, what is like the one thing that you find most powerful when you are working to combat these labels with other people?
So there's times where you have to begin to have belief in who you are. And so the God that I serve, I believe, has helped me a lot. But when I think about belief and faith and anticipation and being able to move forward, and then I think about doubt and shame and fear and anxiety and all these negative emotions that we get when somebody tells us who they believe that we are. And so I get so scared sometimes because, there's still times when I see other people just labeling folks, maybe because they don't understand, or they, I haven't lived in your shoes and this isn't my issue. So there must be something wrong. Like literally a week ago, well, 2 weeks ago, I was at an event and there was we were doing some speaking and the lady said, well, I have these ideas where maybe I could help your business. And if you just sign up, then we can have a 15-minute conversation about, how I might be able to help you. And I said, okay, I'm game. I love to talk to people. I love to help people. I love for people to help me if it's a possibility. And so I filled out the forms and I believe I filled them out right. But then I got something back, from her that said, I'm not going to give you your 15-minute or 30-minute coaching session because you spelled your name wrong. And if you can't spell your name correctly in this form, now I just, like I said, I probably just didn't see it. It probably said Brain instead of Brian. There must be something wrong with you. There must be something that is she said, I can tell by just, your demeanor or the way that you wrote to me that my coaching is if you can't do it to your best of your ability right now, then you don't deserve to be in my space. And it was like, what are you, at this year, I'm 61 years old. I have everything I have. And that still hurt because it just took me back to elementary school, right? It took me back to the time. And then I started thinking about it. Wait a minute. I probably make more money than she does. I probably have more friends than she has. I probably, and then she writes this thing, well, I work for the mayor of Austin, Texas or something like that. I'm like, so I, I ran around. I talk to the mayor all the time. But you start thinking it's so easy to take those levels or labels and make those your identity. And we have to get to the point in our lives where our identity is not determined by what somebody else thinks that we are. And when we can create our own identity, then we can move forward in that identity. We can move forward in who we believe we are, that we are a child of God and we're his, and he made me special for a reason. I think about it that whether I'm identified that way or not, I still have gifts. Like my oral capacity is probably better than a lot of folks because that was my compensation for not being able to do written very well. The other thing that was a label, I guess, is I was labeled in the early 1970s an African American child. My dad was, in an affirmative action program, and he moved us out to the suburbs because he thought that would give us a better life. And there were only three black kids in my school, Ernie Pitts, myself, and my sister. And then I got to high school and I told you we have 3,500 students. My graduating class was 789 or something like that. And there was 35 of us at my high school. when I think about the 35 now today, like 18 or 19 of us were all in special ed classes. That tells you something about labels and what that district thought was our capabilities. So not only was I told I was not enough because of my dyslexia, I was also told I wasn't enough because I was African American, that these weren't going to be the jobs that could get. And I would start believing that, well, I have to see other people who look like me doing the things in order to be, accepted in that world. I even started a podcast called Journey to Freedom because and I work with Black men on that podcast. We have over 280 episodes now of successful Black men who have done things because of the labels of you're not a good dad, or you're not a good parent, or you're not a good, you're going to go to jail, you're going to be on drugs. All of those things that our society and our systems label us as is not enough. And it's so sad because we are all enough. We are all born for greatness. We all have that greatness inside of us. And it's just now finding those things that society told us we were, or even our parents in some cases might have told us we were or we weren't. And I'll let you go from here.
So jumping in here, there's a couple of things that come to mind that I think can give layers into this conversation. So if we understand, and of course, Trent and I, we come from the mental health world through a social work lens. That's one of the reasons why, of course, we look at things in a more non-pathological way. But if we look at the reason that, like, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health, why it exists, and the answer is because it's diagnostic and statistical. Every single one of those diagnoses have a code, and the code is associated with insurance, and the insurance is associated with payment. You always gotta follow the money. In every single thing you do, you gotta follow the money. And so people believe that depression or anxiety or attention deficit disorder, that those mental health conditions are like a biological truth, that the diagnosis is the cause of their problem. And that's just simply not true.
No.
There's no evidence that shows that we have that shows these things as biological entities. They're real, don't get me wrong. Bipolar disorder is a real thing. It's just that they're also socially created, and these are descriptions of the. They're not talking about what caused it. They're actually descriptions, and I think that's really important. That people at this point in life, they're looking for a label. They're looking for a reason to say the way that I am, rather than being able to say, this is who I am. How do I accept myself? How do I grow?
Mm-hmm. And I'm just getting back to what Dr. B was saying there. Like, just because you're not able to do something doesn't mean that can't give you a springboard in order to have other capabilities. Like you said, just because you don't have the greatest reading ability, you're a great orator because you've had to compensate for that. I mean, like, where we actually talk about, I think with ADHD, for example, right? That people with ADHD can have like a superpower. Like, one thing that, if you don't mind me saying, Jeremy, that I always say that you have is lazy lightning. Like, in the sense that because you will find the most efficacious way, the easiest way to be able to get something done, because honestly, you do not have the patience. So if I need to figure out how to get things done in the fastest, simplest way, who do I turn to but Jeremy Alcorn?
For the lazy lightning.
Yeah.
Lazy lightning, I love that. So
yeah.
cool. Well,
That's amazing.
I definitely believe that there are contributing factors in our life and there's determining factors in our life. And those contributing factors are everything that's around us that labels us, that tells us we can or we can't. I can't make it in life because of my upbringing or the trauma that I had, or, because of the neighborhood that I grew up in, or because they labeled me as special that I can't make it. But in reality, that's not the reason that I don't succeed. The reason I don't succeed is because now I've internalized those and they became determining factors. And I use that as whether it's a crutch or I used it as a stepping board, depending on which direction I go, in order to make my life better. And, I ran a few homeless services facilities for a while about 10 years ago. And I did it for several, and to see the folks that came in, no matter what their race or no matter what their color or no matter what their social status was, and to hear those stories and to hear the mental health things that went on in their life, and then to see the pivotal point in their life where they actually tended to give up, where they intended, it wasn't that, it was just so much happened, so many factors that just bombarded them. And there wasn't the coach that I had. There wasn't the people that were in their lives that were telling them that they could. There were more people in their lives telling them that they couldn't, they shouldn't, and they shouldn't even try, which is so scary, because then you start working with them and you start going, wait a minute, there is so much greatness that's in them. There are so many things that they could have done if they had only had some folks that were in their corner, in their life, saying, and like I said, I don't want to say that there wasn't some mental health issues that occurred as a result of some of those things, but I can say for a lot of them, and many of them, it was just the environment that they grew up in that didn't allow them to thrive at the way that they could. And so those contributing factors were so immensely huge and pressure on them that then it just got to the point where I can't. And then you look at somebody who has succeeded that maybe came up from the same household or the same folks, but then there was somebody that said, well, this is my favorite child. And so we're going to give them everything, and we're going to make sure that they're okay. And we're going to make sure that we give them all the experiences and possibilities, and they thrive. And that same child and that other, like you were talking about, Jeremy, about, statistical and data and follow the money, and where the money is spent, you just kind of notice our systems are not set up to keep people alive. You think of our prisons, right? And now they don't, you can't even get mental health services in the prison. Why? Because when I think about the prisons as business now, and the goal of a business is to get recurring customers, right? And so if we get them out, we help them out, all of a sudden they're not recurring and we don't have people coming. I mean, it is such a huge business. And when I think about following the money, how many things in our society are like that, where it's about the money instead of about the individual? And so we got to reverse that, because there's so much greatness in people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, there's something I wanted to jump in there
Okay.
about, because it fits really well within the context of what you're talking about in the school system. Now, I can't say that I understand how all school systems work. I'll just speak about the ones that are in our area. So the struggle is that for a child to get help, they need a label. And it's that process, right? It's like, we need a label, because just like the diagnostic manual, they need to be able to codify this, and the code then goes in for funding, and the school gets funding for that kid for their need. Now, okay, but where does the money go? Once again, follow the money. The money ends up being generally into the classroom. That is, you've got an aid that is funding is based on these kids, but that aid goes into a classroom, and they end up helping all of the kids. The kid that needs the help does not actually, the funding does not stick to that kid. It's used in a general way within the school, within the classroom. So then that's not actually, like you said, fundamentally helping that kid to be able to progress beyond, because the intervention should be to be able to help them carry themselves as far as they can in their capacity, which would mean sometimes that the label comes off because the kid no longer fits the label.
Yeah.
But if they do that, then the school loses their money.
Yep.
That label's not coming off.
Nope, it can't.
Yeah, and I love what you said there, Jeremy, because I think that's a fundamental point, especially with kids, because a label should almost then be looked at like a temporary splint, like myself, who wears like ankle foot braces. Eventually, like when they get strong enough, you don't want to keep that splint on, because that actually goes from being something that's helpful to really restricting their growth. Because I would almost wonder, in some ways, because you take these kids, you put them in special classrooms, which at times maybe they do need help, but then too, what other things are they actually being restricted from by actually being isolated from their peers.
Yeah, it's so true. Our education system today, and this is where I'm super scared, doesn't know how to handle the kids who are showing up. We were educated as teachers, back in 1990 or 2000, classrooms. We are nowhere near with all the technology and the amount of information. We grew up in, I'm not sure how old you are, Trent, but I grew up in an analog world, right? There wasn't computers. There wasn't all this information that we're bombarded with. We weren't having to deal with not just having information come to us, but trying to decipher information. The heroes of my day were Jeopardy, where Jeopardy was, hey, you can memorize all these things. Obviously, I wasn't doing that, but you can memorize all these things. You're a hero. Now I can take my iPhone to the Jeopardy, and if I can get it to work fast enough, I could probably win the show, right? Because I don't need, if they're just asking me regurgitation questions, but I do need to know how to synthesize information. I had a student in my last classroom that I taught in that showed up. He was 12 years old and showed up from Cambodia. And so now he's a refugee, into my classroom, teaching computers at the time. And they tell me I have to pass this kid along, but he had never been to school. Not only did he not have a language barrier where he didn't know English very well, he had never been to any type of schooling in his life or been taught anything. Well, what am I as a classroom teacher with 30 kids in my classroom? This is a system that now the school's getting the funding that you're talking about, Jeremy, because now we're supposed to educate this child, but they put him in my classroom, for 2 hours in a day. I don't have the resources or the ability and he didn't come with an aide. He just came by himself and showed up every day and smiled. And so all I could do is try to talk to him and give him some computer programs and maybe it would help him. But if he can't read in his own language, how is he going to read in our language if I give him a computer and just give him stuff? And so why are we not educating in a way that's going to make that child as successful as possible? Because the funding doesn't allow for it. And so until we change that model, it's scary.
Yeah, totally. I want to come back to something else you said before. And when you're talking about moving towards strength. So this is something that's, I think, really fundamentally important. There's lots of ways that I know I have deficits. That's not a question at all. I can't math. Like at all. And it's a good thing my teacher was wrong. So you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket all the time. Yeah, well, Mr. Anderson, actually, I do. But that notion of strength and people being able to excel through less of a deficit focus. I notice that you're a man of faith. I think we talked about that before previously. So I want to use a quick Bible story, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So lots of times people think of the story of David and Goliath, and they use it all the time as a metaphor, right? To say the underdog winning. But the thing is, no one seems to tell the part of the story that David was actually the deadliest warrior to step onto the field. He was the deadliest warrior. And why? Because he didn't play Goliath's game. Because he said no to the sword, to the shield, to the armor. He just went and picked up 5 rocks. But he'd already killed a bear and he'd killed a lion. You can shoot a bear in the head with a 22 and it will just make it mad. And he had like a hand cannon that he was bringing with this sling onto the battlefield. It was like Goliath was showing up with a knife at a gunfight. And no one talks about that, right? Talking about Trent, you went through your own process as an incomplete quadriplegic and got a master's degree and are working as a therapist now. That certainly wasn't because you played everybody else's game.
No, not absolutely not. I mean, and in many ways, it was about being able to, like, one of my famous quotes that I use all the time is the motto of the Navy SEALs, where it's adapt, improvise, and overcome. And I think that that's something that, I've for myself, it's about, okay, I'm on the playing field as everybody else, but how am I going to find my own way through? And a lot of it was through, getting those proper resources for people to teach me how to be able to be resilient, because I think, as you both mentioned, like, we all have the resiliency inside of us, but I think that has to be nurtured.
It does.
And I think, they try to teach people, or I think by giving deficits, we've talked about follow the money. I think on some level where, like when we're talking about this on an individual level, people try to be helpful by pointing out the things that don't work well. But then it's about the next question is, okay, if that doesn't work well, what are you going to do with that? Just because I can't walk or because I need assistance from other people, what am I going to do with that? How am I going to learn to survive? Because that's the thing is that like survival of the fittest doesn't mean always having everything at your fingertips. It's about if you've got two sticks, rub them together and create fire. Sorry, I know that's kind of a basic analogy.
No, but so good, because just because we need help in one area doesn't make us lesser. And somehow
Uh,
we believe that, right? We internalize that and say, I can't do this, so I must be less than that other person.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
and I had a person many years ago that used to help me out, and I remember this specifically. My mother always talks about me learning to climb stairs, and she always used to say, "We are literally ripping can't out of the dictionary," because a lot of it is about like the language that we use really defines our world. So whenever we're working with people, we have to be very aware of when we give them a label, we're actually creating the world around them. So how do we put that into the proper context?
When I hear, I look at our title and labels cause limits. And
Hmm.
I think labels, can cause limits, but don't have to, right?
Well, yeah. Well, and then like, on some level too, it's about they can be limiting, but they can also be a structure for us to build off of.
Mhm.
But it's about can we see it that way? Because I do have a label as a person with a disability, but I had to take that label and say, what does that mean to me? And I think that that's something that, that's the next step that a lot of people struggle with. Just because you're labeled as dyslexic or ADHD doesn't mean that you have to take what the diagnostic and statistical manual says. You can pick and choose and create what that means to you.
Well, and I think people that, once the label's been put on it, don't really understand. Like when I think of somebody with a physical disability, and I have a really good friend that she's in a chair and she works for the airlines, and she tries to help the airlines understand if somebody comes in and they're in a wheelchair, what it takes to be able to get from the gate, from the curb all the way to a
Mm-hmm.
gate where you can actually get on a plane, and all those things that us we that are that are physically disabled take for granted. Like, does somebody actually have to pick me up and put me into a seat? How am I, if I have to go to the restroom when I'm on a plane, how am I going to get up and get to the restroom? And then is it accessible? And so does somebody have to take me, or do I have to wear a diaper at the
Mm-hmm.
whole time that I'm on a plane? How do I get through the doors? How do I get into, I mean, all these things that we don't think about, and we go, oh, well, that person's, they get to go first. What?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I love the fact that you brought that up. Yeah, because like I think that that's a major thing is that we're all stuck within our own context
Mhm.
where because again, on a neurological level, it is physiologically easier for the human brain to just map on, your context or, or my context onto the next person rather than to create something bespoke and to say, okay, can I put myself in that person's shoes
Mhm.
and say, okay, what does that honestly take? Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
does. It takes, I mean, and once we do that, now the empathy can come in. Once the
Mhm.
empathy comes in, now we can go, wait a minute, okay. So that doesn't mean this isn't the smartest person that's in the room. You think of Stephen Hawking or something like that, where you go, wait a minute, there's brilliance that's there. I just have to tap into it. And so I could care less about some of these other labels, because where can I find, I say, my prayer every morning is, dear Lord, give me the wisdom to do the things you put me in this earth to do in a way that pleases you and serves others. And if I can wake up in a way that I get to serve somebody, no matter where they're at, I don't care I don't even want to know what their label is. I want to find out how I can serve them so they can be the best they can be. And if we lived in a world like that, imagine what if we were able to help people become the best they could be, how much different our world would be instead of trying to step on them on our way up.
Man, I love that. That is so powerful. And I don't know if I can, I'm only going to speak from my own personal point of view, but I think for anybody that, has been labeled, again, it's about, for a lot of us, we want to be seen and heard, and we want to contribute, because there's so many times where it's about that we've been shown that we're not good enough, but it's like we want to be empowered. So if you do that, imagine where the world could be if you said, okay, well, let's find you something to do. And then that would give people purpose.
I wrote a book that's called There Is No Tiger. And the premise of There Is No Tiger was back in the caveman days, or back in the day when there was a true threat, a true fear, a real and present danger that somebody would have to guard the cave, because when we guard the cave, then the people could live, because the saber-tooth tiger or whatever it was would want to come in and eat people. And so there was a reason to be afraid, because there was real and present danger there. When we move into 2026, some of our
Mhm.
tigers that we, because of the labels that we have, will create, they say, my tiger is public speaking. I'll just give one that is generally for a lot of people. I'm so afraid of public speaking that it paralyzes me. And then we start thinking, well, are you going to die if you get up there and you do something wrong? But we're
Mhm.
so worried about what other people think about it, because we're not worried about speaking. We've been speaking in public our whole life, right? You talk to somebody every single day. You talk to people in crowds. You talk to people in the hallway. We public speak all the time, but all of a sudden we get on a stage. Now we're worried about what others are going to think about us. And when we come to some of these labels and disabilities, we look around and we want to be with the crowd, because if the crowd says there's something, I got to be on the side where I go along with, even though I might not believe that, wait, what we're saying or what we're doing, this is wrong. We shouldn't be doing this. But we're so afraid of what people will think of us. That anxiety that shows up, that we almost paralyze ourselves when we don't look at, okay, so what's the worst thing that could possibly happen if I go speak in
Mhm.
public? Somebody, I don't think in today's that people throw fruit or vegetables at you. I haven't seen that in like, literally, what is, you get up on the stage and you start speaking, you could just do a bad job and then you get down. And what the reality is most people will have empathy for you, like, oh, let's work with you for a little bit. Let's help you get better. But we're
Mhm.
so afraid of what others will see and what they will think of. And there's so many different ways that we can combat our fears. And once we do that, now we have the ability and the freedom to really start going, wow, I can do this. I can make this happen. Somebody's going to help me.
Mhm.
Somebody's going to walk me along, which is so.
Mhm. Yeah, man, you're hitting me with so many things. I mean, there again too. I'm just going into like classic CBT. I'm
Yep.
going into everything like right there, because like you were just hitting like right there with catastrophization. Where I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, it's like, okay, like let's honor the worst case scenario. Like, what does that make you feel? But then like let's honestly step back and examine the evidence and say, okay, what if you look at it on a scale of like 0 to 100, what's the likelihood of that actually happening? Like you said, I don't think that people will throw fruit. They might heckle you, but we're not dealing with Stetler and Waldorf
Yeah.
from the Muppet Show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, the two old guys.
yeah,
Yeah, I remember that. What a crazy show. But yeah, and you
yeah,
think,
yeah.
and I have a whole chapter on CBT in my book, but it's, these things, the little things that we can do. And if we think about, the facts that come from a belief system, we're going to believe
Mhm.
that we can, or we're going to believe that we can't. But if we get so stuck in the belief of shame and doubt and fear, and it creates anxiety. Whereas if we can get onto the side of faith, and then we think of the things that we are possible, because it's all about an outcome, right? Whatever you believe, right? Because any belief is about a future outcome. So it's either going to be an outcome that's going to be a positive outcome, or it's going to be we believe in a negative outcome. Because in the word belief is lie. We be lying or we be living, right? Because we don't know what's going to happen. If I say I'm going to go to work today, I believe that I'm going to get to work, but I may not. I may not get there. I'm not guaranteed that when I get in the car that I'm not in an accident or I get a flat tire and all these things happen. And so it's all based on a belief of a favorable outcome or a negative outcome. And so when we get into the negative outcome, it creates anxiety because we believe that something's going to happen that's going to be an unfavorable outcome that's going to stop us from being able to do what we're going to do. If we get onto a positive side, now we can start believing in anticipation. And you guys can all remember anticipation at Christmas time when you were going to get a gift that you couldn't wait, you couldn't sleep at night, you couldn't do anything. How do we get folks to start living in anticipation of a positive outcome? Hey, I'm going to go to this job interview, and this job interview is going to give me this incredible job that's going to now, transform me so that I can go buy that Corvette that I wanted, or I'm going to go be able to get it. We don't believe in that. We go back down the road of I'm going to get on the bus, and somebody on the bus is going to steal my wallet, and I'm going to get off my wallet. I'm not going to be able to get to my house, and when I get to my house, then my wife's not going to love me no more because she thinks I'm cheating on her, and we just keep going and going and going down this road, and none of it's going to happen. I mean, with the probability, I know you're a math guy, Jeremy, so the probability of all those things that are happening are so minuscule, and yet we spend more time ruminating on something that isn't even going to happen.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It totally makes sense to me. In fact, one of the things I wanted to do, we always do this, people that are on our show, we have them on our show for a reason as we look at what they're trying to promote in the world. And so we always do a shameless plug. Always. It's
Always
time,
like to
isn't
do
it, Trent?
Yeah. Hit us with your shameless plug there, pal.
All right. I do have a shameless plug because I just started. If you go to becomingtheperson.com, because I have a whole universe called Becoming the Person Universe, and it's all about helping people become the very best that God put them on this earth to be. You'll see in the background, I have my show that's called Living Boldly with Purpose. What does it mean to live in boldly with purpose? It means to live in what God put you on this earth to do, and to do it extremely well. And so in the last few months, I just created an accountability project where people can come in, and we're going to do cohorts of folks that it has a declaration page where you declare what you want to get done in the next 90 days. And then we put a group of people together that are dedicated to helping you become that person or do that thing. So let's say something as simple as I need to lose 20 pounds. Well, you're going to what do you need to be accountable to being able to do that? Somebody might come in and say, well, I want to make $30,000 in the next 3 months. Okay, doable. We can do that. But I only want to work 1 hour a day to do it. It's not doable anymore. Let me help you figure out what you got to do to be able to do that. Or I want to change my relationship with my wife, or I want to be a better person around folks. Whatever it is, you only get to declare one thing for 90 days. And then we work as hard as we can to be able to help you get there. So your group of 5, you're going to get on Slack every single morning, and you're going to put the top 3 things that you're going to do this day that are going to help you towards your goal. You can't say things like, I'm going to clean my desk today. Well, that ain't helping you get to nobody's goal is cleaning your desk. That is just you procrastinating because you're afraid of that unfavorable outcome. And so anybody who wants to go there, go to becometheperson.com. Let us help you get to your number one goal, because accountability is one of the hardest things for a human being to do by himself. And we all say, I can be accountable, I can do it. And it's almost impossible for us to do the things by ourselves. God put us on this earth to be around people and for have people to help us get to where we're going to go. He didn't put us on here to do it alone. And so I don't want you trying to achieve anything by doing it alone. And so that's my shameless plug, is let us help you be able to hit the goals and the things that you wanted.
Amazing.
Love it.
Amazing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Jeremy. What stood out to you about today's conversation, dude?
Yeah, so for me, my reflection on today, looking at where you started in your life, Brian, and looking at this even within the conversation that we had. We started with a conversation about starting with limitations, and we ended the conversation with you talking about how this sets into fundamental beliefs about ourselves that we tell ourselves we can't, it's not possible, and where all those limitations really become internalized. And it's really about almost like breaking the brainwashing. I
Hmm.
don't know how else to say it, but breaking like
Mm,
Yeah, so good.
the coding that has been coded
mm.
into us, that those limitations that get created. So that's my big takeaway today.
Yeah, yeah, and can I join with you? Yeah, it's about one thing that I really that you really said, Brian, that really spoke to me was, like really asking yourself, or finding that one person that is feeding you or that's nourishing you with that counter narrative and saying to yourself, like being aware of what that is and saying, can I feed into those people? How are those people helping me? Or maybe how can I help someone else? Because I think it's about not only about helping yourself, but also about paying it forward too as well.
Oh my gosh, absolutely so true. Yeah, I mean, it's those limitations that we put on without somebody to help us, that we've now decided that this is who I am, who I get to be, and I guess it's
Mm.
just going to be that way. And I just want to encourage people today that it's not going to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. There's nothing in our lives that say that you are. This is how you were labeled. This is who you're going to be, and you don't know have any choice. I think like in the agrarian culture where there were lords and dukes and that kind of stuff, and if you weren't a landowner back in those days, then you just didn't have the opportunities. And that simply isn't true in 2026 or as we're recording this today. It is not even close to true. And I would love to, if you guys will let me, there's an intentions that I do a devotional every single morning. It's called the routine.live. And every single morning, I talk to people about, I do some breathing exercises, and then I do a short devotion that I do. And then I talk about doing affirmations, and I talk about doing some things that are incantations and that kind of stuff. And one of them is just one that I do that is called the intentions for today. And I would love to read it for you if you guys will allow me to. It
Please.
says there's 7 of them that I encourage people to do. The first one is I want to say I want to make a promise to myself. I want to make it today. I want to say it today. I want to do it before I go to bed. I'm going to write it down. Why? Because I want to honor my commitments even when no one else is watching. Second thing that I want you to do as an intention today is I want you to make meaningful connections. I want you to choose people over distractions and presence over convenience. If we can be 100% present when we are meeting with somebody, our eyes are up, our phones are down, and we are there. We got 2 ears and we got one mouth. That means we listen twice as much as them we speak. And so we're there in the moment with that person. The third thing that we're going to do is we want to make space for stillness and clarity. We want to be still. We want to breathe. We want to listen. We want to make room. We want to slow down long enough to hear what matters most. The next thing I want to do is I want to lead with gratitude. I want to choose to notice what is good, present, and already working in my life. 3 times today, I want to stop. I want to look. I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, because I lead with an attitude of gratitude. The fifth thing that I want to do is I want to act with purpose. I do not want to drift through my day. I want to choose my direction intentionally. I want to reflect on what I did today, tonight, and keep what kept me on the path to my purpose. The fifth thing I want to do is I want to leave people better than I found them. I want to leave them better than I found them. I want to add value. I want to speak life. I want to lift someone up. I want to encourage and uplift and serve whenever I possibly can. And then the last one and the seventh one that I want to do is I want to trust God with what I can't control. I want to pray about it more than I want to worry about it. And I want to release what is not mine to carry and focus on what's mine to steward. So today I will keep my promises. Today I will be fully present. Today I will create space for stillness and clarity. Today I will stop, look, and say thank you. Today I will take action that aligns with my purpose. Today I will leave people better than I found them. And today I will trust God with the rest. And if I do that, that will allow me to become the person that I was put on this earth to do. So thank you for letting me share that. And as intentions of, if I can start my day like that every day, what are your intentions for the day that you've been given?
That's
Love that.
beautiful. Yeah, in fact, that's a great place to wrap up, isn't it, Trent?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And on that note, I'm Trent Akers.
And I'm Jeremy Alcorn.
See you next time.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope that this message has been as meaningful to you as it has been to us. If you're looking for help, you can find us on Facebook at Humanizing Mental Health.